Hey, this is Barbara Ann Mojica, author of the Little Miss History series, and I'm here with Scott Ferguson, and it's time to level up.
Time to Shine a Day Podcast Varsity Squad. This is Scott Ferguson. We're at episode 338 with my good friend, author, historian, Barbara Ann Mojica. And she is the author of the series Little Miss History. It's a really cool little collaboration between her brainchild of Little Miss History and writing about history and her husband doing the illustrations for it. And I really love digging into how they work together, her passion for history, not wanting to erase history. It was just such a fun conversation. And there is an awesome free book giveaway if you listen towards the end. We're having a fantastic free book giveaway. And if you like this episode, please leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps with our sponsors and affiliates. And without further ado, here's my really good friend, Barbara Ann Mojica, author, historian of the Little Miss History series. Let's level up. Time to Shine Today Podcast Varsity Squad. This is Scott Ferguson, and the people that have listened to my shows, or they might see me on social or whatnot right now, they know that I am, a history nerd. Okay, I love history. I like to go back. I feel like Barbara will say, you know what you're talking about a little bit when you know the actual history. And my good friend Barbara Ann Mojica, she provides the tools to inspire, entertain, and educate the youth. History is the key to solving today's problems. If you're tired of being bombarded by social media noise, accept the challenge. Be a truth teller. And the way you can do that is through knowing your history. She's using the whimsical Little Miss History character to narrate her book series. She makes learning history a fun-filled adventure. And she firmly believes if you don't know your history, you don't know what you're talking about. And Barbara, thank you so much for coming on. Please introduce yourself to Time to Shine Today Podcast Varsity Squad. But first, what is your favorite color and why?
My favorite color is blue,
Blue. Okay.
and that's because blue can carry such a range of emotions. It can
Right.
be pale and soft like the sky, or it
Mm.
could be intense like a sapphire blue.
Yeah.
So I think blue can fit many moods, and I
Right.
just love to use it in so many ways.
I love it. And it's in your color wheel. You're even wearing it right now.
Yeah, that's right. I am.
I I'm here in Jupiter, Florida, and I'm looking at the Atlantic Ocean right now. So blue's kind of my favorite color too. So it is beautiful. So let's get into. Did I read correctly that you went to school to teach youth? Is that right? Or I'm trying to pick it up from your website, but I just didn't. I'm not understanding your. Let's just get to your origins. Let's just say that your origins of
Okay.
like
Well, I
education.
was born in New York City on the border between Brooklyn and Queens,
Okay.
and I grew up in a lower class environment. My
Mhm.
parents were not highly educated. Neither of them finished high school because they were children of the Depression era. But I had a love of education from the get-go. There was something within me. I loved to read. I was very curious. And my parents did foster that as much as they could. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of financial resources, and college wasn't in the cards for me.
Mm.
Um, but as I began my journey in school, my teachers kind of pushed me along. And in high school, I had a fantastic history teacher. And of course, history would become my ultimate passion. And she was just so dynamic, and she inspired me. But she also saw something in me. And she told me, you just have to go to college. And
Mm.
that had never really been in my head.
Really?
I was going to be working in the business world. I was taking courses that would help train me for that. But she motivated me, and I said, okay, I'm going to find a way to do this. And I continued to study and work hard. And at that time in New York City, there was available a public college system that was based on merit. And if you had the grades,
Hmm.
you could get in, and the tuition was almost non-existent. You had to just pay for your books and supplies. And I did that. I really, really put my nose to the grindstone, and I was able to get into the college of my choice. And I continued to work hard, and I was able to get a scholarship
Wow.
for graduate school. So my passion was initially history, but when I finished my undergraduate and graduate degree, I realized that I did love research, but I didn't want to live in that kind of ivory tower world of academia.
Hmm.
So I veered toward kids. I love children and I liked to work with them. So I decided that I would teach children,
Oh, wow.
and that's what I did for many, many years. And my career took many twists and turns. I worked first with children in a private school, general ed type of setting. And then I realized over time that not everybody learns the same way. And there were so many kids that were being left behind. And I went back to school again and I got certification in special ed. So I started a whole new career. I worked with children with intense special needs, and
Mm.
I became eventually a principal of a special ed school and then a school district administrator in New York City.
Wow.
So I've always had that tether to history. I
Sure.
veered off into the education sphere, and again, being very people oriented, but I was drawn back to that as well
Okay.
because I always
Okay.
kept my foot in the water.
Yeah.
And when I retired, I decided, gee, what am I going to do with myself now? I retired and I was happily moved out of the city in upstate New York now,
Okay.
but I still wanted to work with kids and I wanted to use my history. So I started
Hmm.
writing historical articles for a local news magazine.
Okay.
And then I said, gee, wouldn't it be great if I could make history exciting and inspiring for
Thank you.
kids?
Yes.
So that's what I did, but my husband was the catalyst for that because
Mhm.
my husband is an artist,
Okay.
and he said, "Well, if you want to make it fun and exciting, why don't I create a character for you to kind of
Mm.
narrate that series?" So my husband has a lot of background in children's books and all kinds of writing. He had worked in the children's publishing industry years
Okay.
ago, and he does a lot of work with comics and cartooning. So he
Mm.
created Little Miss History. And Little Miss History is a cartoon character who narrates the series, is an interactive kind of character who within children can see themselves within her. I think she's a part of
Sure.
a lot of the lives of kids. So Little Miss History is really me. She's a composite of me.
Love it.
My husband created the character. I used to wear pigtails like she has, and I love to travel and hike. So she wears kind of like a hiking park
Yeah. See
ranger
that.
outfit,
Yeah.
and that reflects that part of my life experience. And she also wears these rose-colored glasses because that reflects my belief that we should always try to put a positive spin
Yeah.
on
And
everything. I see the glass
absolutely. Absolutely.
half,
So
not
with
half empty, but full
right. So
at all times.
absolutely. So with your husband being a partner in this, do you guys ever get into creative disagreements?
Mm, not usually. Now, my husband is also a history buff. He
Okay.
loves history and he's very, very into exploring all kinds of places and people.
Hmm.
But the only time we get into some kind of disagreement is when I have a finished script,
Mm-hmm.
and a script for me usually involves at least 10 or 12 revisions because in writing a children's book, the hardest part is getting it down to the nitty gritty. You
Sure.
It's a picture book, a multimedia book, and you don't have a lot of words
Sure.
to put into that because you want to make it fairly simple
Right.
and appealing to all ages.
Sure.
So what happens sometimes is I have my message all set out and
Mm.
then it's ready to go to illustration
Illustration,
and
right?
he takes a look at it and goes through it and his first step is to make thumbnails. So he does his
Sure.
thumbnails as to
Okay.
how the
Okay.
pages will be laid out and
Hmm.
then sometimes it just quite doesn't work. His vision of how to portray the story artistically in image form
Hmm.
doesn't always jive with the text. So
Okay.
sometimes I will have to make slight revisions
Okay.
again to coincide with his artistic vision. So
Oh,
that's the
wow.
only time we will really have a
Love
disagreement.
that partnership. Love that partner. So, Barbara, what do you think then people's biggest blind spot is to history? Like, what do you think? Some people it turns them off. Why do you think that that might be?
Because they don't understand what history is.
Okay.
History, everything in the world has a history, right? So art, music, anything has a history. When we're born in the middle of a story. Okay, there
Ooh,
have been people who have come before us in our family, in our community, in our world. There are people that we're going to interact with during our lifetimes while
sure.
we're making our own history. And then there are people who are going to come after us. So history is really something that's evolutionary and it's something that's important to every single one of us because we're all characters in history. We all have a role to play in creating this ongoing story. So people see history as just a series of events or timelines or dates or really important people like George Washington or
Sure.
Napoleon. But
Right.
it's not that. History is really made up of everyday people who
Yeah.
get up, they eat breakfast, they go to work, they have relationships with family and friends
Sure.
and they do their own part to change the world every single day.
Right.
So that's
Right.
what I think is the biggest misconception of history.
Understood. Yeah. So, speaking of history, have you seen the movie Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get that DeLorean with Marty McFly. Let's go back, man. Let's go back to the Double Deuce, the 22-year-old Barbara. What kind of knowledge nuggets, as we call them here in Time to Shine today, what kind of knowledge nuggets might you drop on her? Not so much to change anything, okay, but to maybe help her shorten a learning curve, you level up or blast through maybe just a little bit quicker.
Well, what I think I would tell my 22-year-old was to be more bold and
Mm.
to let my curiosity
Oh,
out there
yes.
and act more on what I'm thinking rather than
Ooh,
just
I
think
love it.
about it.
I love it. And
Yeah.
when you can flex your curiosity muscle, so many things become apparent for you to really embrace. So I love that. And if you don't know something that you're curious about, like my good friend Leah Woodford would say, get your asking gear. Ask. There's people there that can help you. And so, how about your dash? How do you want your dash remembered? That little line in between your incarnation date and your expiration date, your life date and your death date, because that's your history. How do you want your dash remembered?
I think I'd want people to remember I think you should live every day to learn something new
Oh,
so that you
yes.
can learn how to live better every day.
Wow. That's deep. A lot of people know. I've asked that question a few times. No one's really said that, but you're right. Learn something new or even meet someone new and learn from
Mhm.
them so you can live a better life. I love that. Wow. So, what do you think then people misunderstand the most about Barbara Ann?
I think people, when they see me, they tend to think I'm very quiet and serious and
I can see that though. I can see
kind of
it.
like mousy, but I'm really not. I'm
Okay.
really very open, and I am a quiet type of person. I'm not
Hmm.
really loud,
Yeah.
but I think I'm very much interactive and outgoing with the people that I move with in my own circle. So I
Yeah.
think people people kind of misjudge me in that way.
Wow. So what is your favorite point in history that you love to dig into? Because we talked off, Mike, about me. I'm kind of the Civil War through the Gilded Age because of all that to me that's happened. Because being an entrepreneur and whatnot, and having your Rockefellers and your, J.P. Morgans and your Henry Fords and stuff like that. But like, what point in history really, for lack of a term, turns you on? Like I can't wait to dig into it.
Well, that's changed. When I was first studying history, my specialty in graduate school was ancient and medieval history.
Mm-hmm.
But now I am more into American history, I would say from the Revolution through the Civil War.
Oh, beautiful. That time. It just seems like there's so like, okay, so you had the Revolutionary War in the 1770s or 1760s to kind of start into the 1770s. So, but then that's done. And then you had the War of 1812, but you didn't, it's like it's such a blank slate. People forget that 80 years between the end of the Revolutionary War and when the Civil War really kicked off. It's like that's my next endeavor, Barbara Ann, is to really dig in to that time between the War of 1812 until 1855. Like, I don't know jack about what happened in that time. And that's my next kind of endeavor to dig into, even though just because, like I'm curious. And like, I couldn't tell you a president in between 1812 and 1860. Like that's how bad it is for someone that's really into history. So I love that I'm talking to somebody. We're like kindred spirits in a sense that we kind of dig in, but you have the ability to write about it and whatnot. So we know that Little Miss History is you, but do you put other people that were in your life into Little Miss History, the stuff maybe you've learned along your timeline?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, we're all a combination of our experiences. And I think
Yes.
sometimes we don't even realize uh, the the number of people that have influenced us. And, it's just something that kind of filters through our brain in the background. And we
Yeah.
don't even realize how much we're influenced by little tiny events that happen to us and people that we might meet even briefly in
Yes.
our lifetime. So yeah, I think during my long career working in education with so many different kinds of
Yeah.
people and parents in so many different kinds of circumstances. I mean, I've worked uh, with uh, parents that have come from countries all over the world.
Mm.
I've worked with academic quote types who are very scholarly and take a very formal approach
Yeah.
to things. But and then I've worked with young kids, and out of the mouth of babes, what you learn from very very young children
Yes.
can be quite eye opening.
Yeah.
So I think all of this is kind of now come to a point now in where I can share little nuggets of, what I've learned along the way,
Love it.
in Little Miss History and in the other things that I do, and in addition to writing the books as well, and
Yeah.
trying to share and make things easier for someone
Beautiful.
else.
Beautiful. So, without getting political at all, because I don't do that here on Time to Shine today, but what is your feeling again, I just want feelings. I don't want to go political with this, about some of the history that wants to be erased?
I don't think we learn from erasing anything. I mean,
Okay.
everything that has happened, and the way it has happened and why it has happened, uh, that's all part of the process of learning. History, history, when we study history, we're studying a topic, a subject of interest,
Right.
but we have to look at it from the perspective of the time in which it happened, the people who were living there and the influences on those people who were living there,
Yes.
how the communication has changed, the way people communicated in the past, and the ability to communicate has
Right.
changed dramatically.
Right.
Okay, so, we're 100 years ago, we're talking about the telegraph and writing a letter.
Right.
Now we're talking about instant communication through the internet.
Right.
So our the context, the influences, the way it's communicated, the fact that when we study history, you have to use primary sources,
Hmm.
the letters, the journals,
Yeah.
the artifacts,
Yeah.
the real pieces of
Yes.
what there
Love that.
was. It's not this secondary information. And today we rely largely on secondary
Way too
information.
much. Right.
We don't rely on the facts. We give our own interpretation of
Yes.
the facts. And then with social media, we
Numbs
are
you to it.
often
Yeah.
not given both sides of the question. We're not giving the multiple perspectives
Thank you.
that we need in order to understand anything. So
Right.
that is a part of the problem. When I
Right.
went to school as a young child, I didn't have computers.
Right.
So if I wanted to understand something, I had to go get some books, read about it, take notes, then look at my notes, look at all of the information that I gathered,
Sure.
and then I had to infer and interpret and analyze that information. Do we
Fact
do
check
that
it.
today?
Everything. Yeah.
No, we don't always do that today. Do we
Right.
get the news today,
Right.
or do we get a panel of quote experts who give
Absolutely. Yeah.
us their opinions on
Sure.
something?
Right.
And then we have to decide, well, who do I want to believe? Depending
Right.
on what kind of venue we're looking at, we're
Right.
going to get one spin or a different spin.
Right.
And our friends influence us when we go on social
Right.
media.
Yeah. It makes
What
you
do our
numb to
friends
everything
say?
for sure.
Okay, so my friends say this, so I guess that must be right.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is like even when I'm watching a movie, a good movie, you're gonna have a time in the movie that doesn't make you feel good because you want the hero to win, but it's you don't not watch the movie. You know what I'm saying? You watch it
Hmm.
so you can see it, and that's where like my life to me is like a huge movie that I get to watch and see and learn from, and I love the way that you put that out there. So, what is Barbara's definition of a life well lived?
A life well lived. Well, I think it's a lot like my philosophy. I think a life well lived is taking all of what you have learned and experienced and being able to then use that to share and help others.
Oh my gosh, they could be said better by anybody. I love it. In Time to Shine Today podcast varsity squad, we are back. And Barbara, you and I could probably sit down and talk about each one of these questions for 15 minutes. Okay. But you have 5 seconds to answer them with no explanations. Okay. And they can all be answered that way. Are you ready to level up?
Okay,
Let's
putting me
do
on
it.
the spot.
Let's
Okay.
do it. That's right. That's right. Here we go. Barbara, what is the best leveling up advice you've ever received?
go to college.
Beautiful. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
Eating well, exercising, and working hard every day.
Love it. Can't beat that. So, other than your own website, and of course, Time to Shine Today, my shameless plug, what website does Barbara go to level up?
Oh, one website. That's tough. There are so many. I think I would have to choose history.com.
Love it. Love it. What, if any, is your most commonly used emoji when you text?
I like a smiley face with hearts.
Beautiful. Nicknames growing up?
Big Barbara, and that's a funny one because I wasn't the Big Barbara. I was Big Barbara because I was older than the girl downstairs who
Gotcha.
wound up growing up and being bigger than I am. So,
Gotcha. Okay. Chess, checkers, or Monopoly?
Monopoly.
Gotcha. Go to ice cream flavor.
Soft ice cream, chocolate and vanilla swirl.
Beautiful. There's a sandwich called the Little Big Barbara. Build that sandwich for me.
Okay, let's see. W- Wheat toast,
Okay.
cheese, bacon,
Ooh, there you
lettuce,
go.
and tomato.
Love it. Got some man candy on there, that bacon. I love it. Love it. Love it. Favorite charity and or organization you like to give your time or money to?
Um, Veterans organizations,
Thank you.
several of them,
Thank you.
like VFW and Wounded
Yay.
Warrior.
Good deal.
Also, for children, St. Jude's Hospital for
Thank
Children.
you. I donate to St. Jude's every time I get that envelope in the mail, which is like usually once a month. And I also, I served 7 years. So thank you for doing that for the veterans. So, best decade of music, 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s?
Ooh, 60s.
Awesome. Awesome. And lastly, and don't elaborate on this one, just give me that time frame. What time would you go back for one day in history where you can come back today? You can't change a thing, only observe. What day in history would you go back to and observe?
Mm. Uh, the Peloponnesian War.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So, Barbara, how can we find you, my friend?
My website is the best place to find me, littlemisshistory.com, just like
Yeah,
the character.
in squad, it's little Little, miss as in MISS
Right.
history.com. And you can go there and you can find awesome merchandise. I'm going to buy this coffee mug actually. You can find awesome merchandise, all the reviews, all of her books. And now we're at the books, and she's got a lot of books, and I believe 14 books and another book as well that's out there. And Barbara, like I can't wait to actually myself dig into them and get in the journey of Little Miss History. But um, can you tell us a little bit about the latest one you have out, the Monticello with the Thomas Jefferson?
Right. Okay. So Little Miss History travels to Monticello, the home of Thomas Jefferson, gives children a window into Thomas Jefferson's life.
Mm,
Uh, you can learn a lot about a person from the home he lives in. Now,
sure.
Jefferson lived in an extraordinary home. He
Yeah.
was an amateur architect, and in his home, his home evolved in many different stages, and
Hmm.
since Jefferson was president and he sponsored the Lewis and Clark expedition, his
Right.
home is filled with artifacts from the Lewis and Clark expedition. So he was a lover of the classics. So there are busts of Roman art. There are
Mm,
beautiful paintings. He was an inventor, so he had this
yeah.
wonderful clock with weights that went all the way down to the cellar and marked each day. A
Wow.
very, very unusual one. Uh, he, of course, was one who loved books.
Mm-hmm.
So Jefferson had a voluminous library, and his library actually became the basis for the Smithsonian Institution,
Love
because
it.
when Washington was burned, he
Mm-hmm.
donated his
Okay.
books what would eventually become the
Library.
Library of
Yeah.
Congress.
So that's all kind of in the book with Little Miss History and
Right.
Squad.
So
Mhm.
there were many different aspects to his life. Of course, he was a plantation owner.
Right.
He owned and had slaves.
Mm-hmm.
The book is dedicated to all the descendants of
Mm.
Thomas Jefferson, many of which uh, were originally slaves.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the role that slavery played in his
Mm.
life. Actually, Jefferson wanted the slave trade banned, and he
Okay.
wanted that written in the
Okay.
Declaration of
Right.
Independence.
And that's all in
That
the book then, right?
Right, it
Okay.
wasn't
Very
put
good.
in
Very good.
because of pressures and
Awesome.
of the colonies and so on.
Awesome.
So children learn all about these things, but throughout the book, it's very
Mm-hmm.
interactive. And
Beautiful.
I ask children their opinions, and I ask them questions, and I give them uh, opportunity to continue the discussion once they've
Oh,
finished
beautiful.
reading the book
Okay.
as well.
Excellent. Excellent. In Squad, I am going to do a free giveaway, especially if you have a little that you really want them to dig into a real history of Monticello and Thomas Jefferson, because my good friend Barbara Ann does her research and she knows what she's talking about. The first person that puts Little Miss History in any of our comments, I don't care if it's Pinterest or LinkedIn or Twitter or anywhere that you see this podcast or where you picked it up from, or even my our phone numbers in our the show notes. So if you even text Little Miss History, I'll make sure that you get the first one that does it will get the book mailed to them. And Barbara, I just need you to do one last solid and leave us with one last knowledge nugget that we can quickly, one last knowledge nugget that we can take with us, internalize, and take action.
If you don't know your history, you don't know what you're talking
I
about.
love it. And Squad, we just had like a really kind of back in time fun conversation with my good friend Barbara Ann Mojica. You know, she had a love of education from the get-go. She grew up really curious. She had people in her life, the counselors and whatnot, that pushed her to blast through her identity of humble beginnings and to go to college. You know, and later as she went through life, she learns that not everybody learns the same way. You know, and kids, she doesn't want to have any kids left behind. And she has unbelievable patience to do what she did, the principal of a special needs school and what she's did. You know, she has an awesome partnership with her husband. I would love to be a fly on the wall while they're in there talking about the creating of the book. That would be just this fantastic. You know, she reminds us that everything has a history. We're born in the middle of a story. So what we do does mean something. You level up your life and make it known if that is what your passion is. You know, she would remind herself and also to remind you, be bold, let your curiosity run wild and let that shine and act more. Get your, asking gear if you don't know, but take that action. You know, and she wants you to learn something new every day to live a better life and to pass that on to others as well to help them level up their life. You know, that she reminds us we don't learn by erasing anything. You know, everything is a process of learning no matter what's happened in the course of history, whether it's worldwide or this great country, United States. And she wants you to take again what you've learned and experienced and being able to share that and pay that forward to somebody that might be able to learn and use that, because again, it's a form of mentoring. You know, my mentor always said the more you mentor, the more immortal you become, because they're going to keep passing it on, passing it on, passing it on. And that's what my good friend Barbara's doing. She's planting trees that she's never really going to sit in the shade of, but it's part of her story. We'll change it to her story instead of his story. But no, in all seriousness, Barbara, you level up your health, you level up your wealth, you're humble and curious, yet you're still hungry to be able to put out great content. I'm blessed to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on. I absolutely love your guts.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity to share with all of your listeners.
You bet. We'll talk soon. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Time to Shine Today podcast. Proudly brought to you by Sutter and Nugent Real Estate Excellence, who can be reached at 561-249-7266 and online at www.sutterandnugent.com. If you are a business owner or professional who would like to be interviewed on Time to Shine Today, please visit timetoshinetoday.com/guest. If you like this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. There's a link in the show notes to our website. Also there, you will see our recommended resources. We hope that you will support our show by supporting them. If you like what you've been listening to, it'd be great if you could just give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe while you're at it. I'm your host, Scott Ferguson, and until next time, let's level up. It's our time to shine.